My name is Stephen DeMaura with Americans for Job Security, and we are a pro-growth, free market, conservative issue advocacy organization. And we focus primarily on advocating for small businesses, entrepreneurs, especially in the regulatory sector. And we work primarily to create an issue environment where small businesses can prosper. And we see this bill as an overstep and really a dangerous assault on innovators and entrepreneurs. We just launched the first phase of an advertising campaign in Austin and San Antonio to call attention to this issue. And this is going to be the first phase of an advertising campaign that we're going to take nationwide in the coming weeks and months. We have really three primary concerns that I'm going to address today really quickly. The one is that we believe that SOPA will stifle innovators. As the small businesses and entrepreneurs are getting off the ground, they will really see an assault from trial lawyers and from big businesses, which could really put a slower halt to job creation in an industry which has been really powerful over the last decade or 20 years even. The second is that in an industry that has created 15% of all GDP growth since 2004, why would we want to add additional regulatory burdens which would slow or even stop their hiring of new employees? I think that's kind of something that most free market pro-business conservatives can agree on, that additional regulatory burdens are not helpful to businesses looking to hire. The third is that I think it gives a new pipeline for trial lawyers, and that the only thing that this would really help, it would be a growth industry for trial lawyers. We have been very successful in kind of slowing the effects of trial lawyers across the country. This would give them new opportunities to stop innovators before they even get off the ground. AJS was recently active in promoting successfully the loser-pay tort reform bill in Texas. So when we took the advertisements into Austin and San Antonio, we made the same point, is that the tech industry has thrived in Texas, as well as it has in other places, because of this, the current regulatory environment. So why would we want to turn that on its head in a way that is not helpful? I think that there's a couple of questions I would have on this, or a number of questions. But the first is, what's the rush? We're not rushing through a jobs bill. We're not rushing through deficit reduction plans or any other number of issues that are so helpful or important today. So why are we rushing through this bill? Let's take a step back. It's something that can so profoundly change the environment in which businesses operate today. Some of the concerns that we have about this kind of go deeper than this. We don't have the time to address it all here today. But I think that the stifling innovation, hurting job growth, and the pipeline for new business for travelers are kind of.
Hello. My name is David Moon, and I represent Demand Progress. We are a progressive civil libertarian organization, so I'm here to represent hopefully that segment of the internet base. I'm also representing Fight for the Future, which is another new group. And I just want to point out that the fact that a new group like us is even at this table sort of speaks to the power of the internet in democratizing things. I mean, I've never met these people, for the most part, I don't know them, but we found common cause. Found each other on the internet, along with over 600,000 people. And those people who have signed petitions from various groups, and they're growing every day, have not had a proper voice in this debate thus far. They were not invited to help draft these bills. They were not invited to testify in the hearings, and they continue to be ignored throughout this process. So we're here to send a very clear message, and I brought some of these people with me, 300,000 of them before the toner ran out, but they're right here. So we're here to send a message to President Obama, Congress, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, that internet users, ordinary internet users around the world, are alarmed at the provisions in these bills, both the censorship provisions and the innovation stifling provisions. And I want to talk about it from a more sort of personal angle because everybody sort of has an industry focus here. And I just want to say, when you talk about entrepreneurship and the internet, well, the people that we represent are people who are selling sweaters on eBay. They're on Craigslist, moving some used things out of their garage, and they're potentially coding the next eBay itself. So we're talking honestly, ordinary internet users. Over 600,000 of them. Thousands of them have emailed Congress in the last few weeks, and again, we continue to be alarmed at the lack of response from members of Congress. Just this past weekend, I was speaking to a 20-year-old, random internet user, and she said something very profound, which was that she felt her parents were internet immigrants. And by that she meant that, those from a generation who grew up pre-internet, they need sort of ambassadors to sort of explain to them what the internet's all about, and they maybe don't understand certain, aspects of it as intuitively as those who grew up in the internet era did. And increasingly, when we look at the policymakers that are sort of weighing judgments on this, it's hard to not see this as a generational issue. So on behalf of the young people, we also would like to say, just look around the world at what's going on and the ways people are using the internet for speech and innovation. And we want you to protect that, defend it for future generations.
Thank you. My name is Patrick Ruffini. I represent Don't Censor the Net. My background has been for over 10 years trying to move people on the internet into political action, and seeing firsthand very early on, before people in this building believed it, before people in Washington believed it, the absolutely disruptive force that people on the internet could have, that bloggers could have, that small website publishers could have, and absolutely seeing in the very early days that we had to, that those of us who started out maybe running a blog, running a website, that we had to assert ourselves more in the political process, lest the internet become a medium like any other, where you have to actually get permission to publish. The internet is unique because you don't need permission to hit post on something, and that is absolutely disruptive. That is absolutely what Hollywood is trying to change. They want it back, sort of closer to the older model, where they control the printing press, where they control the movie distribution, and where you have to kind of run it by them. And I absolutely think, with this assault on the DMCA, we're absolutely seeing that in place. And I think if there's a clear message that comes out of here, is that it's don't mess with tech, don't censor the internet. Gigi was absolutely right about the hearing tomorrow. I mean, it seems like we're seeing a small preview of what will happen online when, God forbid this bill were to pass, in terms of its censorship. And they don't want this. They don't want the other voices to be heard. They don't want other voices to be heard. Absolutely, and shutting out any other voice, because they know that once this debate becomes public, there really isn't a shot for this actually to pass. I come from the conservative side, and any time I explain the basic provisions in a fairly neutral manner to people, the DNS blocking, the broad new authority for the Department of Justice, the trial lawyer-friendly private right of action, the response from people is, are you kidding me? And it's no coincidence that the opposition to this bill online has come from the grassroots. It's come from the groups that are closest to the voters, the groups that are closest to the constituents on the right. It's come from groups like the Tea Party Patriots with over 850,000 members. It's come from the American Center for Law and Justice with over 1 million members. It's come from groups like AJS. The only presidential candidate who has expressed an opinion on this has expressed an opinion against this. I don't imagine that internet censorship is, if somebody were to come out for it, it would be very popular. among primary voters in Iowa and New Hampshire, or anywhere else for that matter. And I think these folks are sending a message that, you know, you're taking a pretty serious political risk by coming out for something in favor. We've seen bills like the internet kill switch last year. You know, if this becomes a massive public debate, you know, I think we're not going to see any discussion of doing anything about piracy, because it's going to shut down any discussion, any reasoned discussion whatsoever. But if you can actually listen to the other side, we might actually be able to have a productive and reasonable discussion about this. You know, Hollywood's throwing the kitchen sink at this. You're spending millions on lobbyists. And the funny thing is that if they actually had spent a couple minutes talking to people who understand anything about technology and how the internet works, they probably could have saved themselves a lot of that. It's bizarre that I think that this solution has come to be seen as the holy grail, when in fact, you know, anybody doesn't address things like BitTorrent, it doesn't address things like people just going simply to the IP address of these websites. But at the same time, you know, it wouldn't be the first time that Hollywood spent millions and millions on something and it turned out to be a flop. You know, Waterworld in that same way. And I think the last people we want dictating technical solutions to these problems are Hollywood and frankly politicians. You know, I think let's listen first to the people who actually understand how the internet works and understand how networks work and understand how DNS works, to come up with a reasonable solution to this. And you know, a lot of our friends on both sides, you know, have signed on to this, and I think it speaks to, you know, there's certainly a well-intentioned aspect to this that we can't ignore. And we understand, you know, if you signed on early on, you know, it's possible that no one else, you just didn't hear from the other side. You know, the technology industry is not necessarily the best at lobbying, because, you know, lobbying is not how they get ahead. They get ahead by making innovative, successful products. And I know it's a crazy idea here in DC, but now I think today this changes that. And I think it changes it when you're hearing from serious people on both sides, from technologists, from venture capitalists, from members, and from political activists who are saying, wait a second, stop. You know, Senator Jerry Moran was initially a co-sponsor of this bill, but once he actually heard some of the arguments, he says, wait a second, let's step back and let's take a reasoned, balanced look at this. And our message is clear. You know, Congress does actually have a choice. The choice is not between piracy and this bill. It's between, you know, as was mentioned before, the approach that tried and failed to take down WikiLeaks through DNS blocking, or the approach that has actually succeeded in taking down sites like WikiLeaks, the follow the money approach. We don't need, we can do this without censorship. We can do this without more regulation. We have enough, you know, as a conservative, I think we have enough regulations already, and I don't think we need the internet equivalent of an NLRB or an EPA, you know, breathing down the necks of small website owners, startups, who will be operating under constant fear and constant threat, not just of having to take down a piece of content, which they have to do responsibly today, but seeing their entire website and their entire livelihoods taken offline based on frankly, a tremendously open-ended and problematic private right of action process that will, even if the government were to use their power responsibly, there's absolutely no guarantee. In fact, there's probably a guarantee on the other side that Hollywood and content owners and people who don't actually own content will abuse that power, and they may somehow also manage to convince a judge, and effectively creating a blacklist for the internet. Thank you.